Hello there, and welcome to Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, the Writers' Room podcast dedicated to fixing Star Wars sequels. I'm Bryce Quinn, and I'm joined by our lead writer, Carmelo Keating. Carmelo, can I get a status update, please?
Yes, Bryce. So where we're currently at the moment is we have a draft treatment for The Force Awakens done, and that's it.
All right. Yep. I'm also joined by Sandro, our progress supervisor. Sandro, is this acceptable?
Right now, I've got a bad feeling about this.
Nice.
Okay.
But that's okay, because this is our very first episode, and over the coming months, we will be making a lot more progress. So, here's how the show works. First, we pick a topic, and this week will be our character discussion of Luke Skywalker. We will analyze who he is and what he means to the story, then discuss what we think went wrong with his character in the sequels. Then, we will pitch each other our ideas for how to fix him in our rewrite. We don't know each other's ideas yet, so things might get a bit crazy, and by the end of the episode, we should have a clear direction with Luke moving forward. So that's the preamble.
Yep.
Let's get into it.
Rightio. So I just want to put this just right from the start, just right off the bat. So Luke Skywalker is a droid, and Babu Frick lives in the head and controls him.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a joke before we started recording.
Yeah.
And now it's a joke after we started
Yeah.
recording.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to do my quick little bit of more pre-written text.
Yeah.
So, first off, this is just our overall general idea of Luke Skywalker. Is, of course, the lead protagonist and hero in the original Star Wars trilogy. Textually, he represents the paragon of true good who must undertake a difficult journey where he grows as a person to overcome great evil. Subtextually, and of course from my personal understanding, he's a call to arms by George Lucas, a character written to inspire hope and justice into children and also adults across the world. Metatextually, Luke is widely accepted by film scholars to be one of, if not the most iconic film hero of all time, and is therefore objectively quite difficult to write. Did I miss anything? The overall broad strokes of Luke Skywalker.
I think that's pretty good.
I think that's pretty perfectly sums it up, yeah.
Oh, thanks, man. All right, we can stop with the scripted stuff now.
Cool.
Luke Skywalker, difficult character to write.
Yeah.
Awful. Hard character to write.
So with the sequel trilogy, obviously, we didn't like it.
I think a big benefit of this podcast is hindsight's 2020.
Yes, that's the whole point. I
Yeah.
think.
So we have a big advantage of being able to come and adjust what we think would be better.
When I say I didn't like the sequels, I really love watching them. I love Star Wars, no matter what, I enjoy watching the movies. But overall, the sequels kind of left a bad taste in our mouth. And when we were let's rewrite the story, we kept coming to this problem of how do we write Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
So my philosophy with this episode is let's just jump at it and do it probably badly the first time, and we'll probably come back maybe a dozen times, who knows, over the next year or two or three, and keep talking about him because he is deceptively, I think, the most difficult character to write.
So it's a problem that Michael Arndt, I think, who was the initial writer of Force Awakens back when Disney acquired Star Wars, he came across was, how do you put Luke Skywalker in the first film when they're trying to make this whole new generation? And they kept coming back to the issue of, oh my God, he's Luke Skywalker. It's the same thing that they had in Rogue One, where they chose to use, Darth Vader kind of scarcely, because once you have Darth Vader, that's all everyone ever wants.
All people want to see is just Darth Vader or Luke
Same deal.
Skywalker.
Everyone just wants to see Luke Skywalker.
I mean, he was in Mandalorian, and people were like, when's he going to come back? And then he was in Boba Fett, and people were like, this is shit. So
It's too much.
You kind of run into this paradox of when to not use him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, are we just going to get right into it, things we didn't...
First part of the show,
Yeah.
Article 1. What went wrong with Luke Skywalker in the sequels?
Well, that was leading me there, I think, to, the greatest issue with Luke Skywalker in this... Oh, yeah, the mic.
Yeah, he's mopping it.
Fantastic. To me personally, is at least in Force Awakens, the greatest problem with Luke Skywalker was that he was a plot device and not a character.
A plot device, not a character.
Yeah.
In
the sense of he's not in the film. Luke is...
Yeah, he doesn't have an arc, he doesn't have motives or anything he wants to do.
No.
He's literally used as what do they call it in Spider-Verse? the doodad? Or
the doodad, the doohickey
thing.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what he is. He's the Death Star plans. He's the thing that everyone wants, the thing that everyone's looking for. Yeah, so in doing my research for this week, I went back and I rewatched all of the Luke Skywalker scenes from the sequels. Try to break them down as much as possible. And as much as I love that ending scene in The Force Awakens, and it really builds, it's really majestic. I think that it was
I think
perhaps
that's
not the right choice.
one of the things of the sequel trilogy. It can be beautiful.
Yeah.
It can be well shot. The music is incredible, and it all builds this lovely looking thing to look at. But if you just start thinking about what does this actually mean? What is the motive here? What is the theme? What is this story trying to tell you? Force Awakens, worst contributor, doesn't mean anything. It's just it's there's no meaning really there of Rey's journey getting to Luke Skywalker. Yeah. Anyways.
No, but she found Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Sandro, your turn. What's something wrong with Luke in the sequels?
Well, it was interesting Mello was talking about Michael Arndt before, I had like a bit of sort of pre-context because I think it's a problem that we're going to run into later on. Was early 2012, before the buyover for Disney. Lucas hired Michael Arndt and eventually Lawrence Kasdan, who co-wrote Empire and Return of the Jedi, to start working on sort of like a treatment. Now it's not for what would be a 7th film. It's not really defined how much work there was there. There's a little back and forth. But I do have Michael Arndt's quote that he did in a Q&A in 2015 that I think Carmelo was referencing before, and it goes like this. It just felt like every time Luke came into the movie, he just took it over. Suddenly, you didn't care about the main character anymore because, oh fuck, Luke Skywalker's here. I want to see what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that eventually they had him become like an old, isolated hermit.
Yeah.
Which I think is sort of something we're probably going to end up touching on in this episode.
Absolutely.
Because that was it's in concept art of like the Lucas approved version.
His original treatment that he gave.
Yeah.
You can find it in the book Star Wars Archives, which is a big old thumper, big old text. So you guys went like super hardcore on those first points. I literally just wrote, and this is exactly what I wrote. Luke Skywalker is a grumpy, sad old man. That's what I wrote. It's like, that's what I think is wrong with it.
No, actually,
Well,
It
that's
just,
like
it just feels wrong to me.
yeah,
You know
no,
what I mean?
that's fair. That's fair. No, because that leads me to another thing is that so in talking about him, being a grumpy, sad old man, being isolated on an island, yada yada yada, is that he's a defeatist.
Yeah.
And I don't think Luke Skywalker, from where his character evolution from Empire to Return of the Jedi, I don't think that he is a person who could be a defeatist.
That's another point that I've got later. He seems to be a lost character with no direction or purpose.
Yeah.
He's defeated.
Yep.
No direction or purpose. He's just a dude on an island who knows the Force.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's
Yeah.
just really,
seemingly to me where the sequels went wrong is Luke's meant to be like a compassionate character, where he's like sort of like a bystander to everything that's happening to Kylo throughout. Shit,
Just me.
was that bad?
Punch the mic. It wasn't too bad.
He's sort of like a bystander to everything that's happening to Ben throughout the trilogy. He's not trying to go out there and save him, which seems like off. Seems like Luke Skywalker would do everything he can to try save the people he loves.
Similarly, Luke Skywalker tried to kill Ben Solo. So that is bad. That's a bad thing to have exist in the story. Yeah. And obviously, like if this seems weird to listen to, it's because we're trying to remove the context of the story that exists from the events as they are written on just like a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker tried to kill Ben Solo. If you remove the context of Force Awakens: Last Jedi, that seems like a wrong thing to write into a treatment. That feels like twisted. That doesn't feel right. That feels like another universe as Luke Skywalker.
Especially when you consider the fact that it's like he was willing to like take Darth Vader's flaws and faults and be like, no, but my father's still in there.
Yeah.
I don't care if he's the greatest mass murderer in Star Wars galaxy's history. I'm going to save him.
Yeah.
Why would he kill his nephew for killing a few Jedi?
Exactly. Sandro?
Yeah. No, well, he's just the ultimate compassionate figure, and I just don't see him wanting to off his nephew like that.
I think that in our context earlier, he is, like you said, the ultimate compassionate figure. He was designed by George Lucas to be like a beacon of hope and virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of corny. You don't really see a lot of writing done like that these days. But if we're trying to take the original trilogy and do something with it, none of this really feels in place or in step with that character that we saw 30 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
So my next point, Luke has contradicting beliefs. Is a very specific one. For instance, the sacred Jedi texts.
Yeah.
He literally flips from one scene to another of like, oh, the texts don't matter, I'm going to burn them, to, no, the Jedi texts. A lot of his character decisions don't make a lot of sense. A lot of beliefs about the Force and what he thinks the Force is and what he's trying to teach Rey. There's no consistency there. And especially his actions in The Last Jedi, as much as I love The Last Jedi, a lot of it feels contradictory. A lot of it feels like he's just flip-flopping from scene to scene, depending on what he needs to deliver in terms of the feeling of that scene to progress the story forward.
So I had a little thing about like on Luke abandoning the Jedi. That's one of the problems I've got with him. Is that I've got here Luke would never give up on his family, nor would he give up on the Jedi Order. I think, or at least an idea of what a better Jedi Order could be. I think that was part of his character growth in Empire. In the fact that he can't lift the X-wing because he's ignoring the Force. He doesn't believe it. He's refusing it, and I think
that is why you fail.
And that is why you fail. I think he grew beyond that.
Yeah.
I think that if Luke were to go and there's this whole thing about mistakes. That's the key lesson he tries to teach Rey is about mistakes of the Jedi, and that's why they have to end. They make too many mistakes.
Right.
I think he would take those mistakes and use them as teaching points.
Right.
So yeah.
Interesting. We'll keep that for later.
Keep that for the next
And
episode.
in our second
walking it,
section of this episode,
Right.
which is when we come up with ideas to fix him. But for now, I've got a couple more notes. Finish things off. I don't know. Have you got more notes, Sandro?
I got like here and there. I'll just.
Here and there. Okay. Actually, you go with yours. I'm going to read and see if this is still relevant.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to just go? Because like I feel like so much of what I have is just based off why he's compassionate and why he's meant to be like outwardly caring.
Okay.
And like trying to fight for the people he loves. I don't understand why he's like leaving Kylo in the dust and like wanting to go off to a separate, isolated planet and just like sit there for the rest of his days and drink green milk. As much as I love green milk.
As we've talked about. Green milk, delicious. Luke represents hope and goodness, and everything he worked so hard for in the original trilogy seems to have been for nothing. Like, a lot of what he did is reversed. The First Order is the new Empire. Palpatine returns. Everything that he strived so hard for to overcome in the original trilogy is kind of wiped away. People would say, that's why he's so defeated, that's why he's so lost. But I think the choice in the first place to wipe away all that progress is kind of like the original sin, or one of the original sins, I think, of the sequel trilogy and the writing when they started, to just kind of revert everything back to beginning of a New Hope. To return the kind of like, just twist the wheel of time back until it was exactly like it was.
We're just sort of here, the First Order's here, they're basically the Empire.
Yeah. And it doesn't make any sense at all.
No sense.
There's no sense of progression from the 30 years the 30-year gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and specifically with Luke's character. Everything he did was wiped away, and that feels pointless and bad. I hate it. But yeah, I think that's my final point, Sandra. If you want to jump into some wishy-washy stuff about his compassion, go nuts.
No, I feel like I've said everything I need to say. Mello talking about like Luke going on the Death Star, like it's like quite literally a suicide mission.
Yeah.
It's not like part of the rebel plan. He doesn't need to be up there. He's just like, I'm on Andor. I guess I can get up to the Death Star. I'm gonna go save my dad. There's no reason for him to be up there. He's not there to kill the Emperor. If he wanted to kill the Emperor, he'd just jump in an X-Wing and help everybody else out. He's only there for Darth Vader, for his father, Anakin Skywalker. He's not there to try fulfill some great prophecy. He's just trying to save someone.
Yeah. It's a very like individual kind of, there is this massive prophecy that he doesn't really care about. He's there straight up. He's like, I am your son. You are my father. I want to help you. It's very individual. It's very personal. I think that's very cool to his character. He's never really been a big thinker. He's not like a big broad strokes kind of guy. He's a very individual, like community focused.
Yeah.
Never focused on where he was, what he was doing.
The need in front of his nose. Yeah. No, he's much more emotional than he is logical.
Anything, Mello?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Happy there?
I'm honestly, the bulk of my stuff is focusing on what to change. What are we doing? Yeah.
So we're done bashing Luke Skywalker. Is there anything nasty we can say? We'll go a bit dark side with it.
Go and throw your lightsaber. Jeez, man, have some respect. You haven't seen that thing in 30 years, and you're just like,
Crazy.
yeah, fuck it off the cliff. Yeah.
The lightsaber throw is stupid. We can get rid of that. Yeah.
Maybe he found out between the 30 years that it's the Youngling Slayer 3000.
Yikes.
Oh boy.
He found out what that lightsaber did.
All jokes aside, that would be a fun thing to explore. He's like, so it turns out this lightsaber killed a lot of children.
Killed a lot of Jedi.
Yeah.
And children. Specifically children.
Are we able to talk about, like, in this section of things we did like, or are we just going to push that into the next bit?
We can talk about things we like.
Okay,
I
guess things we did like.
about Luke?
I loved his look. I love this look you see in the bobble.
That looks good.
Yeah,
That looks
I
very
love his
he's
look.
no glove on his robot hand. Looks sick as.
so cool.
It's very good.
I think he looks right, so that's cool. His whole, like, he sees into Ben's mind in Last Jedi, to see what might happen in the future thing.
Yeah.
As an ability, I think that's brilliant. I think that's really cool.
We've definitely seen it used before.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a super new thing. But to see Luke...
Kind of like a
Specifically,
twist on a new thing. I
it
think.
is a twist on anything. Straight up, like, Luke is like, I'm sus of you. I'm going to look into your side of your brain and see what's going on. It's pretty cool. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that use. Do I have much else here? No. Like, I've got a handful of really, like, good quotes of his that I think if we recontextualize them would be cool.
I am so gung-ho on keeping the quote of, like, we are what they go beyond. I think that is a magical quote.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
My problem with that quote specifically
Okay.
is it feels I was thinking about this last night.
Yeah.
It feels kind of weird because he's like, we are what they go beyond. As Luke's sitting there and he's still needing to learn from Yoda. So clearly Luke hasn't gone beyond Yoda.
No, I see what you mean, but I think if we recontextualize a bit of that scene, the scene specifically where Yoda and maybe even Obi-Wan Kenobi come and talk to him as Force ghosts, I think could be a really, really good scene that already exists, but I think if we change the context around it, could be even better.
I still think it's really like I obviously like Luke still did everything he did in the original trilogy. So I guess he still technically did go beyond.
Yeah.
But it's like it's cute that he's still there and he still needs lessons.
I think everyone should need lessons forever.
Yeah.
You don't ever stop needing to learn.
Who's teaching Yoda?
Who's teaching Yoda?
Yeah.
Oh, they're long dead.
The actual Force.
Yoda's great. Yoda's fine. Yoda's like
He, like, in the Clone Wars, he learns from Qui-Gon, in
Yeah.
a sense. You know, like, he still, learns things. He can still grow and can continue to change. But
certainly.
anyways.
Radio.
Any
So-
other positives about Luke, or should we jump into our brainstorm?
There's positives in the
Brainstorm.
what I'd change section, so I think we might just run into our brainstorming.
So, I'm going to lead off with a very simple one. Flows on directly from my very simple first negative about Luke. He should be a positive, good dude.
Yeah,
That's
I think that's a
super blanket statement.
I don't think that's asking too much.
No, I think he should definitely be more positive and more focused towards like showing good and demonstrating good in the galaxy.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You guys jump into some more complicated stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so like I see your suggestion. I'm gonna raise you things I was trying to bring up too early. What Luke is teaching as a Jedi Master, what he's teaching to, let's say, our next generation, or what sort of philosophies he would hold. Again, I'm gonna recontextualize a quote. If you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure.
Yeah.
I think that's a great quote if you change it. And I think that, like I said before, Luke's new philosophy would be, in having learned about, the past wrongdoings of the Jedi and their mistakes and stuff like that, he'd use that as lessons. I think the bulk of Luke's teachings, if he would have them, would be around learning from your mistakes, making mistakes, and growing from them.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I don't think he'd be, afraid of that past of the Jedi. I don't think he'd want to reject the Jedi Order. I think he'd want to help evolve it.
So you think the core of his character, and this is starting at Force Awakens, should revolve around wanting to learn from your mistakes and kind of grow and not be so like structured and rigid to the rules.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
okay.
Luke never was if we're talking like the traditional Jedi Order, the Jedi Code. Luke didn't fit the mold. He started training when he was 19. Much too late. Too old to begin the training. Exactly. I mean, he's a Jedi that went after a Sith to save the Sith from the dark side. Yeah. They wouldn't do that. The old Jedi would just kill them.
They must
that's
die.
Literally it. So, that's one of my big things to start.
Yeah.
With.
Sandro?
I agree for the most part. We've been sort of playing around with this idea in the treatment of Ben having a deceased sister who dies during a Jedi trial.
Yeah, so listeners, you haven't missed anything. This is episode 1. This is an idea we've had with Mello's first treatment.
Yeah. And I can't really see Luke Skywalker being how he is in
Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. With like just sort of like the base context, but I could definitely see how he'd get there if he'd lost everything. If Ben was dead, I could see Luke going into isolation. He has no one to save.
Yeah.
I can see him being at least feeling shame of that. So I feel like maybe whilst he's definitely compassionate and he's trying to learn from mistakes, perhaps the death of Kira has perhaps jaded that a tiny bit, and he's become more of a helicopter parent, learning from his mistakes.
Interesting.
Like he's still sort of applying that base belief, and he's still a compassionate figure, but it's coming from maybe the wrong sort of motive.
So he's motivated by the guilt of.
Yeah.
Also, you named up Kira. Kira in the context is in our treatment the name of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to step back for a second.
Yeah.
Just like zoom out for a little sec. So in your first treatment, and this is an idea we've had for a long time, we have Ben Solo and Kira Solo, twin brother and sister.
Yep.
They're both in Jedi training together under Luke Skywalker, and Kira goes on her first kind of like Jedi Knight kind of training,
like the trial.
It's like a trial.
Yeah.
And she unfortunately dies in a tragic accident. It's no one's fault. It's not insidious or anything. It's just an unfortunate death. And that is kind of the first piece of the puzzle leading Ben towards the dark side, because he's experienced loss and tragedy, and sadness leads to anger leads to hate. Fear, yeah. So fear of like losing the ones you love.
Yeah.
So very similar to Anakin Skywalker, but in a different context.
And I guess what I'm proposing isn't really that Luke goes to become what we see him in Last Jedi, but he's not exactly just the good guy.
I definitely like the idea of having some conflict. He still needs to be, and this is a big note, he still needs to be a teacher. He is still teaching, in my mind, a lot of younglings at the Jedi Temple. His new Jedi Temple needs to have a lot of younglings, and he needs to be teaching them. There can be a significant age gap between the oldest youngling and Ben Solo. So when he teaches Ben Solo, it's a bit of a different kind of apprentice-master relationship to the younglings, but he's still a teacher. So he's not a wreck. He's not a mess.
Yeah.
He still has most of his stuff together, but there is moments where you kind of see through and he's like really damaged by the loss of
It's more
his
of like a
niece.
flaw rather than his whole character.
Yes, it is more of a flaw. It's kind of like the first chink in the armor that leads to potentially his downfall. Something like that.
No, I like that. I might build on what
Go ahead.
what you were saying and go on a little bit of a spiel. So I like the helicopter parent thing because I think that could apply to this. I think the Emperor was right about Luke back in Return of the Jedi. They have this sort of like pissing contests where he's like,
And Ember is trying to like egg him on.
yeah, pretty much. And the bit where he's like, your overconfidence is your weakness.
Yeah.
And that he was right. Luke was right. That's how the Emperor died. And the Emperor says, your faith in your friends is yours. That's a quote I bring up before.
That's interesting.
And I think that that's true. I think perhaps Luke is too trusting and has too much faith in the people he cares about. Perhaps he sees too much good in some people where there might not be enough. He might think that he can make people's decisions for them because he chooses to see the potential rather than the reality of the person. So I think in this whole idea of Kira, I think maybe he had too much faith.
Right.
He thought that she was ready when she might not have been because he sees the best in people. And I have here also, he's not unwise, but he's still prone to rash decisions, and perhaps that was one of them. So I think that the unfortunate lesson that he might have to learn is that he can't save everyone himself, that he can only inspire people, only inspire his students to make the right decisions and to, do something for themselves. So he cannot, force Ben Solo to turn back to the light if Ben's starting to take that path. He can only inspire him, find his own way.
I like that. I had a point. Oh, I've always imagined Kira in my head as very headstrong, very like determined, very rash, very much like Luke Skywalker as a kid almost. Just like, I'm going to go out and do the crazy thing, no matter the consequences.
I see Ben during like the time when they're both training as more of the quiet one.
The quiet, sullen brother, almost the kind of quiet, brooding one. Not even necessarily brooding, but just like kind of quiet, awkward, and shy.
Yeah.
And so it is all the more heartbreaking when Kira passes away because then Ben is kind of left alone without the counterpart, like the warm, happy, excited counterpart to his kind of more quiet, reserved attitude, temperament.
Yeah, certainly.
We're talking a lot about Ben in this one. We should try and stay focused on Luke.
Yeah.
Luke's like overall journey.
So okay, but I will talk about Ben just one more, just a little bit more. Go
on.
So if Luke were to lose Ben, he would do whatever he could to bring him back. It wouldn't be this situation where he's like, oh, he's lost Ben, I give up.
Yeah.
Once again, he's not a defeatist, and it would not only be because he has that extreme faith in people. But then I think guilt could come into play.
Yeah.
The whole guilt of...
Guilt for sure is a part of what drives him. I think.
Yeah. And I think that can be something really interesting to tap into is looking at Luke's guilt of failures. Yeah.
To that point, what I'm imagining is the second Ben makes the decision to leave, Luke's immediate reaction is, I'm going to find someone to look after the younglings while I'm gone. And he's like, I got to find a babysitter for the kids, and I'm going to take my X-Wing, and I'm going to fly and try and get Ben. Like, he's still... He's wise in his old years, but he's still rash. He's still like, I'm going to go out and fix this immediately. I'm going to take action immediately. I'm not going to hide from this. I'm not going to wait and be patient. Maybe he will devise a plan that's really good because he's had so many years to get the experience needed to execute these plans well. But he's going to do it quickly. Yeah. He's not going to wait. To my mind,
get it done
who
as
Luke
fast
is.
as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Just why it's a bit hard to try to determine how big the time gap is between the first, what our first movie is going to be and where our second movie is going to be.
Because we don't know where... I think... If we find Luke's arc, who he is and what he does in the first film and where he ends the story, that will help us shape the overall plot. That's why we're doing these character studies first. So where does Luke start this film and where does he end? As a protagonist or a deuteragonist? This is a new term I learned.
A what?
Yeah, so there's it's like from Greek plays and stuff. You start with protagonist, which is first character, first actor. And then you have, I think it's deuteragonist, which is the second, and then third is triagonist.
Right.
And the reason they rank them like that is protagonists are the main central idea. You can have two or three, doesn't matter. But the second you get to a deuteragonist, it is a character who is important to the story, but it's not fully wrapped up in the core idea.
What about the third one?
Triagonist is a person who is there to help a deuteragonist or a protagonist.
Right.
Yes.
So
So
he
we've
doesn't
seen all of
really
these things
get
before.
along.
Yes.
It's interesting to know like the Greek words for it
Yeah.
that are used in plays and stuff. I thought that was interesting.
Dude, I haven't studied Greek theater since like grade 11.
I didn't
so
study.
that's-
This is a studio binder
this
video.
is- yeah, well,
So then I guess
Callbacks.
in that sort of sense of terminology, I'd see him more as like a triagonist.
No, Luke, I'm feeling is like a deuteragonist. So he's
Okay.
not the one of the main trio. He's not at the core part of the journey, but his journey with Ben, it's one of the three main pillars of our story so far, and their journey together is contained.
Yeah.
As just the two of them.
In the first one, yes, but what
In the
about the
first
second one?
I don't. Shush! Shut up about that.
not sure.
If you want to figure out our character's entire arc, I think we need to figure out where it ends.
No,
as well.
I was talking about Arc in Force Awakens,
Okay. Gotcha.
which we're still calling Force Awakens for now.
Well, we can talk about character arcs now if you want.
Oh, have you got stuff?
I've got an endpoint suggestion. For
What's your
Luke's
endpoint?
character arc
In
Okay.
terms of the trilogy or this film?
in terms of the trilogy?
Okay, what's
Yeah.
what's the endpoint for this?
Just gonna put this out there in the universe again. I think Luke probably should die still.
Okay.
But I've got very specific ways in, like, if he's gonna do it, it's gotta be for a reason.
Okay.
And I've got very specific ideas on that. I think he needs to die sacrificially
Okay.
because that's how Jedi die, noble deaths.
I can agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how Jedi at least should die if they're gonna die.
Which I don't fully hate the way he died in the sequel trilogy. The biggest issue is that him, Han, and Leia never saw each other in the sequel trilogy. I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that's probably a problem.
Yeah.
But his actual sacrifice itself is pretty cool.
It's nice. I think I was telling you guys a while back. I hate to see him leave.
I love to watch him go.
love to watch him go. It's a nice like send off for the character. It's like it's kind of hard to imagine like this character that I think deserves like a happy ending, dying sacrificially.
I do have another point. It's like he either dies sacrificially or becomes super old, like Yoda said. When you reach 900 years, you're not gonna look as good as me.
That's funny.
Luke Skywalker turns to 900 and dies peacefully.
Yeah.
I think that's how he's gonna go.
I don't know why he needs to. I don't know if he needs to live out happily ever after. I think he can die happy knowing that the future of the Jedi is secure and his friends and family are safe. I think that if he can know that for certain, and even if he can know that maybe like Palpatine is for sure gone forever. We're not going to talk about Palpatine right now, but we've got that for later.
Yeah.
If
And
he can
also-
know that in his heart, then he can die.
Yeah.
And also that like his last few actions were the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about him making a few mistakes.
Yes.
It seems like in this first one, and then maybe going into the shit.
I'm going to start a counter of every time you punch the microphone.
Yeah. I'm not even. It's a light tap. It's talking about him. It's hard. It's hard to like keep wanting to talk about the point, and then I'm just like,
It's hard when you're so violent. You just want to hit things. I hate the sequels so much.
This is why we've got Kylo Ren's like bubble in front of Sandro.
yeah.
He's filled with rage.
I'm gonna come in one day. I'm just gonna punch the shit out of the table.
Where'd you get that lightsaber?
I think like if we're talking about him making a few mistakes in the first one and then going into the second one, having his last few actions be the right thing for his character to do.
Yeah.
And closing off on that and having him know that he's doing the right thing and him feeling good about it is a good way to send him out.
Yeah. And also make it not too similar to Obi-Wan's death, because they are, if you look at them, they're very similar. We got to build the context around it so that they're not similar. That's a small detail.
I don't hate them being too similar.
They
though.
can parallel each other. They can rhyme, but I don't want them to be like, I don't want him to be on a hallway in, the Empire or the First Order's like hangar, like directly saving them so they can fly away. It's got to be a bit different.
But Rey's on the other side and she's like, no!
Alrighty. I'm going to do another simple one.
Do it.
Luke must be powerful in the Force, which I think we saw in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
But I think this must be believable power, but still awesome power. And awesome in the sense of like, it is grand, it is great.
Yeah.
He is the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy. So I think that's going to be one of our, like the biggest things we want to hit and one of the most difficult things to achieve.
What do you have to follow? Like, do you have much to follow that up?
Use of the Force to communicate across vast distances. We saw that in the original trilogy. We haven't really seen a whole lot of it outside of, him talking to Darth Vader across the ship, him talking to like Leia across the galaxy and stuff.
I mean, that wasn't crazy far. Though.
It wasn't
that was
crazy
still within
far.
the same system, but it's cool.
But it's kind of like wild though when you think about it, because it's the second Force ability ever introduced in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Ben does it in A New Hope.
Yeah.
He does it after he dies
he does,
in A New Hope.
he does it as being one with the Force.
Speaking onto that point as well, if Luke dies, he for sure comes back as a Force ghost. Yeah. He has had so
Luke's a
much
Force
time
ghost.
to learn the technique to become a Force ghost.
Even then, he's just a good guy. He deserves to be a Force ghost.
Exactly.
That's the logic of Star Wars. Is if you're a good guy, you get to be a Force ghost.
You do one
And
good
then
thing. You
more
throw
to
one
that.
Palpatine down a...
And then you come back. Yeah.
yeah, you come back.
I think he should be in communication with Yoda and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
They should be
sick.
training him or supervising or helping him in some way, not too direct, not literally like they're turning up to teach the younglings, but he can have conversations with them occasionally.
I think like full-blown conversations feels a bit far to me. I know that there's not really an argument to like why they can't just show up.
Yes.
But also then
It
why
should feel
don't-
special.
It should feel special. It should feel like Korra going into like the Avatar state and like communicating, and going into Avatar state and communicating with past avatars.
Yeah.
So it has to be when necessary, though. That's I think the key
Yeah,
thing.
used when necessary. I'm actually imagining a moment where maybe they have been quiet for 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
And then he's surprised to see them when they come back. And he's like, oh, I thought,
They rock up with a case of beers and they're like,
what's
going
it's
on?
like nothing's changed.
I brought 6 friends.
And they come back and they say something along the lines of, have you guys seen, what's the Shining sequel? It's really good.
Shining Sea.
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
So there's a moment where he talks to the ghost who's in The Shining, and he's like, "This place is just a dream of a dream to me now, man. Like, I'm not long to be a ghost. Like, it's a second death almost."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm not even gonna be a ghost anymore. I'm just gonna pass into the next life." It could be honestly something more like that, where Yoda and Obi-Wan have been around for so long now that they're close to passing just straight up into the cosmic force. They don't maybe appear as much as they used to anymore. That's not really something we've explored. Like, what is the longevity of a Force ghost in Star Wars? And, they have apparitions, talk to them in the Clone Wars that have been around for like thousands of years. There's like a Sith apparition that I'm thinking of talks to
There is
Yoda.
Darth Bane when he goes to like a Sith temple. And
Different
it's kind
to a Force ghost.
it's completely different.
But still similar in the thing of like, let's say it's been a really long time. They're not going to be in direct communication as much, but they will slowly start phasing out. And when they appear, it's like, oh, this is important. They're talking to me because this is an important thing they need to talk to me about.
Like Luke and Ben needed to do it because he needed to guide Luke. It's been 3 years since A New Hope. Luke's just fucking around with the rebels. Like, bro, you got to become a Jedi. You've got things to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Jedi things, important Jedi things.
Jedi things.
He's like, he's a pretty casual about it in Return of the Jedi, or no, Empire Strikes Back, when he's flying the X-wing up out of the swamp, and they're both in the flashing red light, and they're just chatting. He's like, it's sad, prophecy can't be fulfilled. He's gonna die,
And then Yoda's just like,
no,
No, we got a second shot at this.
dude, I have backups on backups. He's like Nick Fury.
He's like Palpatine.
He's like Palpatine. Yeah.
Yes. No, I like that.
Sorry, very long-winded tangent about force powers and stuff, but that's where my mind's at.
And I mean, I don't want to like go on too much more of a tangent about the Force.
Go nuts.
But I also have a bit of a tangent. But Mello, you seemed like you wanted to say something.
I was
first.
going to say something quickly, just when you were talking about like Luke being powerful, just back at the start of that. I like it. I think it's as long as we link it to the whole. There's a reason that people are powerful with the Force, and it's. I think Yoda says it best: is he's the Force is his ally. That's it. He's just completely given himself up to the Force, and it's this tit for tat situation. It's like you open yourself up to me, and I get you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfectly goes into where I'm going.
Oh yeah, go nuts.
Because
for it.
I'm actually going all the way back to Empire.
Okay.
Trust me, this goes somewhere.
Alrighty. Strap in.
Strap in though, because this is me talking, and it's gonna take for fucking ages.
There's gonna be 3 mic punches at least.
At least 3.
Should we make a tea or like?
So I go back to Empire Strikes Back. It's probably my favorite Star Wars film, and Yoda lifting the X-wing out is maybe one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars.
Oh, it's so good.
Hands down. I love the lesson and I love the monologue. The Force is, in my eyes, is almost like an analogy for like faith and hope in something. The lines like, the Force is my ally, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us, it binds us. It's a balanced relationship. I give the Force power, and in return, it gives me power. Having belief in something otherworldly and having that bring that, give something back to you, fulfill you inside, I think. Almost like through my like hope and like faith in the Force. I use the word faith a lot. Maybe it's like sort of like not trying to get too much into like a religious kind of allegory, but like I guess like there's some sort of crossover there. And in return, I'm empowered through the Force, like that tit for tat relationship you're sort of talking about. And you sort of just like see that echoed throughout like the rest of the trilogy. Like, I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
Yeah.
You see that echoed throughout the rest of the saga, and I think that's like a really would be a nice thing to sort of like pivot on. It's still super broad, but it's something that sort of determines where your character is with the Force, because the Sith are sort of just, I take power.
Yeah.
I give nothing in return. I want to see everything burn for my growth. So hopefully you can sort of see where I'm coming from that angle. And I think for the new trilogy, Luke still does what he's meant to do. He's still a compassionate figure. But after the loss of Kira, and this is sort of like going off where I was coming from before, potentially his relationship with the Force is strained. It's not like quite coming from a place of hope anymore. It's more coming from a place of fear of losing someone else. So like this relationship that Luke has with the Force,
Yeah.
I think is super strong, because he's probably like the most hopeful person in the galaxy.
Gotcha.
I think for going into Luke's character for the new trilogy, after Kira's death, his hope has sort of dwindled into something else, and it's fear of losing a loved one.
Yep.
And I think like the only thing that's got Luke close to like sort of turning to the dark side before is fear of losing a loved one.
Yeah.
Right. So it definitely parallels, Darth
Yeah,
Vader.
when Vader puts it over on him, that it's like, if you can't turn, I'll turn your
I'll
sister.
turn your
And that's
sister.
when Luke just goes at
He
it.
goes
Snaps.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I like it. That makes
Very
makes
good.
sense.
I like that too. So, if you're talking about fear, obviously leads to anger, leads to hate. Fear of losing Ben to the dark side. I think maybe Luke can be conscious of this, and he is like worried, but it's that, self-fulfilling prophecy. There's nothing I can do about this. He's trying his absolute best to retain hope and to stay in the light and be one with the Force. But it's tricky. It's difficult. There's a fatal flaw there, and it leads him to make maybe rash decisions in the moment. And like this spur of the moment, if there's a critical choice, he can slip and make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
So, tying into that actually, not really. At the end of Force Awakens, in our rewrite, I think Luke must fight Ben Solo and lose, because he's unwilling to hurt his apprentice and his family.
Yep.
And I think that can be the end of his story for the first movie.
Yeah, that's something we've got now. A first draft treatment.
Yeah.
It's like that's our big piece. That's
Yeah.
our big fight.
Ben Solo is driven to attack him for whatever reason. We'll discuss that later.
Yeah.
But Luke, they have a cool lightsaber battle, and it's sick as, but Luke can beat him easily, handily.
Good.
Yeah.
But he chooses not to. He can't bring himself to, because of his love for his family and not wanting to hurt them.
I think it'd be, again, we can play into fear. More, he'd be terrified of like what his nephew has become, and terrified of the fact that he's losing him in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think by the very implication of that, we've changed Ben Solo's character. He is now no longer starting Force Awakens as Kylo Ren. I think that's something we'll discuss much further in detail in a different episode, but today we're talking about Luke.
Yeah, no, I don't really have much else to discuss for today.
Okay.
However, like, I did want to talk about maybe like some structure stuff with Luke in the story, because we've discussed him as the C plot.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the treatment that
The treatment,
Yeah.
he was definitely C plot. I would personally prefer that's more of the B plot, and that Leia's story could be the C plot for the first one.
Okay, so are we focusing less on Leia then?
Yes, less on Leia.
Less on Leia.
That'd be my preference, but we're talking about the treatment now. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Luke. What do you want structurally for Luke? Do you have any ideas, or you just want to talk about it?
I feel like our main big action piece should be on the main characters,
Sure.
and perhaps that Luke and Ben's fight should be maybe a bit faster.
Okay, that's fair. I get what you mean. I mean, like when we say main action piece, it's our lightsaber battle.
Again, I still think you're thinking within the scope of the treatment and overall what's happening with all characters.
Yeah.
Only think of Luke. What is his arc? What is changing for him as a character and a person?
Gotcha.
Don't think about the overall like action, planes of action and stuff right now.
Gotcha.
Could zoom in a bit.
Yeah, fair enough.
For me, Luke starts as a teacher. He is hurt, and he and Ben are trying to. He specifically is trying to reconcile with Ben, and that's kind of what we see. We see him as a teacher for most of the movie.
Yep.
Things change, and like I think maybe Ben is led towards the dark side, and Luke is trying to pull him back from the brink. He is helicopter parenting.
Yep.
And honestly, and if anything, driving him further forward.
Yeah.
And because of his insistence on like, all right, now because of this, all right, we're going to go to this planet and go on this trial.
Yeah.
And he's being very pushy, being overbearing almost.
Yeah.
And that ultimately leads to some kind of event happening, some kind of cataclysmic event as Ben gets led towards the dark side, where Luke ends up having to fight him, not because he wants to, but because Ben is coming to kill him.
Yeah. On the defensive.
He's on the defensive, and he's just trying to, talk him down, calm him down, but ultimately he loses, and he must regroup with his other friends and his family, like Leia and Han and everything.
I really like that. I don't think this is sort of like related to Luke, sort of related to Ben, but I don't think we've really got to see somebody nudge someone to the dark side that way before. We've
Okay.
seen people convince people into the dark
No,
side.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've seen people turn to the dark side, but we haven't really seen someone not that it's like out of spite. You've pushed me too much trying to help me, but what you're doing isn't working.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we see something very different with Yoda. And when Anakin's coming to him in Attack of the Clones, or Revenge of the Sith, he's like, I'm feeling this, I'm seeing these visions and stuff. And Yoda's like, don't do that.
Just let go.
Just let go and you know, honestly, get out of my fucking office. Like, leave me alone and just meditate, dude. You can figure this out yourself.
Yeah.
That's our time.
Exactly. he's kind of indifferent. He's cold and reserved. You know,
Yeah.
he's not letting Anakin in. He's not being there for him. He's just saying, don't think about that, bro. Don't think
Whereas,
about it.
so like, yeah, and we talk about Luke being the compassionate Jedi. So I think
Yeah.
it's like, I'm here. Let me help you.
And
let me
Ben's
help
like,
you.
I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
I need alone time. You know, it's kind of the opposite.
And it's nice we have Luke has stuff to learn there.
Yes, for sure.
And perhaps like being a bit overbearing to Rey maybe in the next movie.
Potentially.
Potentially. And like him trying to learn how to advance and become a teacher and become sort of that wise sage.
Yeah, and talking about Luke's arc just a bit further beyond that. Yeah, so
Yes.
obviously makes lots of mistakes, and that pushes Ben in the first one. I think he's still got room to make mistakes in the second, and then ultimately he has to make a big decision. He has got to fix something. He's got to finally learn.
In the second film, I would love to see, you know, he recognizes I failed with Ben. I will not fail with you, Rey.
Yeah.
And his ultimate goal is to train Rey so that she can bring Ben back. Where she can succeed where he failed. Oh, I like that actually.
Right.
Yeah.
That he trains her so that she can succeed where he failed. We are what they go beyond. Very
Yeah,
literally.
what they go beyond. I had a very interesting thing to go with that, but
No, go hunting through your notes. I'll vamp. I've got more stuff to talk
Yeah,
about.
go.
keep going.
Did you have something?
I was going to say maybe is that him then making a similar but different mistake again of like, you know, then trying to force Rey
Yes.
into another.
Oh, that's interesting too.
yeah, another part.
I wouldn't want to see him maybe fail that much, but that's definitely interesting. Definitely to keep in mind.
I was thinking go that direction. There's also like a possible direction you could go where initially he doesn't even want to train Rey. Because, and like not for the same reason he doesn't want to train Rey in Last Jedi, more because like he's too focused on trying to go for Ben.
Gotcha.
And they're like, seems like we're going after the same thing. There's something that's brought these two together. Seems like we're going after the same thing. Just help me out.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, does he want to even try train a new Force initiate
Yeah. That's interesting.
right when he's going after Ben?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. It'd be so funny if he was like, "You are too old. I cannot train you."
Yes.
Go for your tangent. Go for it.
Oh yeah, I had a completely unrelated thing. It's no, I don't know if I want to talk about this because we're really closing in on like a really good resolution for where we think Luke should go.
Okay.
We definitely think his arc through the first movie is him being a teacher, being there for Ben Solo, and then towards the end of the film, they split further and further apart as they progress through the story to the point where they have a big fallout, they fight each other, and Luke chooses to lose because he can't bear to hurt Ben. That is a good arc. That's a cool story, and I think there's definitely something there. Even if we change it later, that's a really good something to end
Groundwork.
That's a good groundwork to end the episode on. So I think that can be our final point. But if we want to keep chatting, I've got more stuff that I want to talk about.
Keep chatting.
Let's keep chatting. When will this come up again?
Yeah, good point. So Luke believes that the dark side is a part of the natural balance, and that both must exist in harmony to bring balance. Light and dark in equal measure, right? That's, you know, I think something that they've sort of talked about, but not exactly. But the truth, and this is, you know, not definite, but this is an idea. The truth is that evil corrupts always, and the only balance is in finding the good and fighting eternally against the evil. That is the only balance there is. Evil is unnatural and is outside of the balance. And the first Jedi Temple, another idea, was built above a collection of dark side energy. The ancient Jedi believed that great lice.
Yeah, some big old ticks.
The great light must be met with great darkness, but this is wrong, and this is what leads to Luke's failure, because he, you know, went back to the first Jedi Temple and he started training there, and he's bringing in this darkness which is in balance with this great light, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be. It's a mistake. It's an ages-old mistake.
I like this. It sort of like harkens back to some old George Lucas interviews. He's very like back and forth of what the Force is meant to be, or like what the relationship between the light side and the dark side is. But there's this old one I remember of him saying that once you're part of the dark side, it sort of draws you in.
Yeah.
You can't like use the dark side without sort of succumbing to inevitably the selfish nature of it.
And we see that in action in the prequel trilogy. They build the Coruscant Temple above a Sith temple, right?
Why would
that's
you ever do
that's
that?
canon.
Why?
And maybe there was, a part of that is their hubris, and that was a big part of what Lucas was trying to talk about, was that they were arrogant and they'd grown overconfident in the power of the Jedi. But I think ultimately it also ties to this idea that evil corrupts no matter what. And the only way to find balance is to just fight against evil, because evil will always be there. There's nothing you can do about it, but it is unnatural and you have to fight against it. And that's the balance. And I think that can be a part of what they discover through the trilogy as well. Anyway, that's just more like overall background stuff. There's an idea. We can talk about that more maybe on camera, off camera,
Right.
on mic, off mic. There should be a moment where Palpatine returns. We'll talk about that later. And Luke gives into despair. Everything I fought for was for nothing. He can say that line, And then Rey tells him he doesn't need to keep fighting because she's now there to keep up the fight. Symbolism of balance being about the light needing to win. There is no balance that involves evil, and Jedi must pass down the mantle of goodness from one generation to the next.
That's nice. I think how he framed that moment's probably in for discussion.
Yeah.
Another time.
Oh, for sure. That was just an idea that kind of popped in. I was like, that's related to Luke and his story. And Palpatine can return in a good way, I think.
I agree.
In a way that doesn't ruin Luke's character arc in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And he can even say that out loud. Everything I thought was for nothing. And then they say, no, we got this. And then they kill Palpatine.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's, I think, a tale for another time. I think we can wrap it up there if you guys are happy. Any final notes?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
No, I'm very happy.
Had ourselves a big old discussion. This has been our first episode of Fixing the Sequel Trilogy. You can join us every week on Fridays, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out later. But until then, this has been the Fixing the Sequel Trilogy. May the Force be with you.